Recent developments have intensified trade tensions between Canada and the United States, notably impacting Tesla. In response to U.S. tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump, Canada has taken specific measures against Tesla, including freezing $43 million in pending rebate payments and excluding the company from future electric vehicle (EV) rebate programs. Tesla boss Elon Musk has been busy shaking things up with his Department of Government Efficiency. Interviewer: Are you giving up your other stuff? I mean, how are you running your other businesses? Musk: With great difficulty. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney previously quoted, "The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over." The economic and diplomatic dispute between the US and Canada continues to grow by the day. After both sides had targeted each other with tariffs, the atmosphere had softened a bit. Tariffs on energy, including electricity, were at least withdrawn. This raised hopes that US relations with Canada would improve. However, Washington's wing has managed to get back on Ottawa's radar by taking a critical decision on this issue. Most recently, US President Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on imported cars. What we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. The White House argued that the move would boost American manufacturing, but could send shockwaves through an industry heavily dependent on international supply chains. The U.S. imported nearly 8 million cars last year. That equates to about $240 billion in trade volume and about half of total sales. The new tariffs, scheduled to take effect in April, are projected to generate $100 billion in annual revenue, according to administration estimates. But the policy has immediate downsides. Even U.S. based automakers source key components from abroad, and analysts warn that the additional costs could spill over into the industry, driving up prices, cutting profits, and potentially slowing sales. Donald Trump dismissed these concerns, saying the measure would boost local production and end the ridiculous supply chain spanning the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Markets reacted sharply. General Motors shares fell nearly 8% on Thursday morning, Ford fell 3%, and Stellantis, the parent company of Jeep and Chrysler, lost nearly 4%. Electric vehicle manufacturers have bucked the trend. Tesla and Rivian made modest gains, as investors anticipated that they could hedge against some of the downside. So Trump's 25% tariff on vehicles manufactured outside the U.S. was already working in Tesla's favor. After Tesla's appreciation was reported in the media, Trump warned his European allies in a post. The U.S. leader suggested that if the European Union cooperates with Canada to circumvent the tariffs, it will face much larger penalties than currently planned. Donald Trump was officially confronting Canada and the EU to protect U.S.-made cars, especially Tesla. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney convened a cabinet meeting in response to U.S. leader Donald Trump's attack on Canada's auto tariffs. Prime Minister Carney said that Canada's old relationship with the United States, based on the deepening of their economies and close security and military cooperation, is over. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over. This shock announcement signaled a complete break between the U.S. and Canada. Speaking to reporters after a cabinet meeting in Ottawa, Mr. Carney said Canadians must radically redesign their economy in the face of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. Mr. Carney also said Canada would respond with retaliatory tariffs that would have maximum impact on the United States. Liberal Party leader Mr. Carney emphasized that the 1965 Canada-U.S. Automotive Products Agreement is the most important agreement he has signed in his lifetime. "We are done with these tariffs," Mr. Carney said in French. The Prime Minister stated that Canada can keep the automotive sector alive with U.S. tariffs only if government and business redesign and reorganize the sector. Mark Carney predicted that Ottawa must build an economy that Canadians can control, and that this would include rethinking trade relations with other partners. Mr. Carney added that it is not yet clear whether Canadians will be able to maintain a strong trade relationship with the United States going forward. Mr. Carney has changed his campaign plans to fight the latest import tariffs ahead of next month's general election. Canada has so far responded by imposing tariffs on U.S. goods amounting to about 60 billion Canadian dollars, roughly 42 billion US. After the change of plan, it is expected that Canada will impose tariffs on the U.S. worth more than $42 billion in total, in response to the new 25% automotive tariff announced by Donald Trump. So we could see a new tariff record from Canada in the coming days. This would further escalate tensions between the U.S. and Canada, but the Canadian side claims it will not hesitate to respond. So when will these retaliatory responses come? Experts predict that Canada will take action after the U.S. tariffs are implemented. The White House announced that the new vehicle tariffs would take effect on April 2nd, and that businesses importing vehicles would be charged the next day. Tariffs on parts are scheduled to begin in May or later. As the timing of the tariffs approaches and Canada prepares for retaliatory steps, important assessments are coming from countries around the world. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said through an interpreter that he was very concerned about the behavior of the U.S. government, fearing damage to free trade and a weakening of multilateralism. In Brussels, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen expressed regret at the U.S. decision and pledged that the Union would protect consumers and businesses. Hildegard Müller, president of the German Automotive Industry Association, said that the tariffs will have a negative impact on automakers and all companies in the global supply chain, with particularly negative consequences for consumers in North America. The consequences will cost growth and prosperity on all sides, Hildegard Müller added in a statement. So who will benefit from U.S. President Donald Trump's tax decision? As concerns and reactions continue to come from around the world, Tesla, which has made incredible losses recently, comes directly to mind. The company can cover its losses with additional taxes imposed on non-U.S. produced cars. Otherwise, Tesla's situation does not look good. The company's shares fell sharply on Wednesday, falling 3.8% in the afternoon, and it fell as much as 5.4% earlier in the day. The decline outpaced the broader market losses, with the S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite falling 0.6% and 1.3% respectively. The sell-off comes as Tesla faces growing international trade tensions and mounting regulatory challenges, particularly from Canada, which has introduced punitive measures directly targeting the electric vehicle giant. In a bold move, the Canadian government announced it would freeze $43 million in EV rebates for Tesla vehicles. This decision stems from concerns over dubious claims made by the automaker. Canadian authorities revealed that Tesla made thousands of last-minute rebate requests just before the country's zero-emission rebate program expired. The volume of requests amounted to the sale of nearly 2 cars every minute, 24 hours a day, raising red flags about their legitimacy. Canadian Transport Minister Chrystia Freeland ordered her ministry to exclude all Tesla vehicles from future participation in the country's rebate program. Chrystia Freeland made it clear that the restriction, which she described as illegal U.S. tariffs against Canada, would remain in force. This retaliatory measure is a direct response to President Donald Trump's recent tariff policies, which have strained U.S.-Canada trade relations. It also signals the growing willingness of foreign governments to target U.S. companies in response to broader political and economic disputes. Canada's tariff retaliation adds to Tesla's growing global woes, with the company's chances in key markets diminishing. Recent data shows sales in China and the European Union have fallen, coinciding with CEO Elon Musk's increasingly outspoken political engagement. Musk's alignment with Trump and his public stances on global political issues have drawn the ire of foreign regulators and policymakers. This, combined with Tesla's exposure to stiff competition from both traditional automakers and rising Chinese EV makers, is increasing pressure on the company. On the other hand, Tesla is no longer the undisputed leader in the EV market. Companies like BYD, Xpeng, and NIO in China are rapidly gaining ground, along with Ford, GM, and Volkswagen in the West. These automakers are offering cheaper, technologically advanced models, reducing Tesla's once dominant market share. 2024 in particular has been a big year for Chinese carmaker BYD. The company secured its position as the world's largest electric car manufacturer in the third quarter of the year. It made waves to generate more revenue than Tesla for the first time, and in the fourth quarter, BYD delivered more fully electric vehicles than Tesla for the first time. BYD competes with Tesla, especially in non-Western countries, where Tesla sometimes has a more limited footprint and where the Chinese giant outpaces its American rival on price. A new Rest of the Rest analysis of prices for the company's lowest-cost vehicles looks at 10 non-Western countries and regions where both officially sell their vehicles and offer prices upfront on their websites. They include Mexico, Chile, the United Arab Emirates, mainland China, Hong Kong, South Korea, Japan, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. In Singapore, the price of the BYD Dolphin includes the cost of the Certificate of Authorization, a government-mandated license that allows a person to own and drive a car for 10 years. Tesla's prices do not include the cost of that certificate, and Rest of the World has adjusted the price to reflect this. BYD's most affordable model varies by locale. The Seagull is also known as the Dolphin Mini in some markets, while the Dolphin or Atto 3 are among the company's least costly vehicles. Tesla's lowest cost offering in all 10 countries is the Model 3. The Rest of the World compared prices as of February 27, 2025, and converted them to US dollars for comparison. George Wickham, an analyst at EV intelligence firm Romotion, told Rest of the World that Tesla's Model 3 is more premium than BYD's cheapest offerings. The BYD Seal is considered the most similar to the Tesla Model 3 in terms of class and performance. Tesla has promised for years to make a low-cost, entry-level EV, but has failed. Tesla CEO Elon Musk said on the October 2024 earnings call that the company is on track to roll out affordable models in the first half of 2025. Meanwhile, buyers around the world looking for affordable EVs are turning to Chinese manufacturers like BYD. BYD is reportedly trying to become more competitive in China by asking its suppliers to lower prices while also planning to build more factories outside its home base. Doing so would reduce export costs and potentially BYD's global prices. Being able to compete on cost is a huge advantage in the Chinese EV market. Prices for Tesla cars come from the company's website, which sells directly to consumers. Meanwhile, BYD is partnering with local distributors and dealers to sell its cars in regions like Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. This is a cost-effective option that allows the company to leverage a distributor's existing sales infrastructure. The prices listed on BYD's website for the 10 countries and regions used in this analysis are suggested retail costs, which can vary by site. Singapore is the only country in the Rest of the World measurement where there is little difference in price between Tesla's Model 3 and BYD's Dolphin. Owning any car in Singapore is very expensive due to the country's Certificate of Authorization requirement. Despite the price similarity between its cheapest model and Tesla's, BYD was the best-selling car brand in Singapore last year. After Singapore, Japan sees the smallest price difference between the two automakers, but Tesla's Model 3 still costs about $12,000 more than BYD's Dolphin. In Thailand, Tesla's offer is more than BYD's by the widest margin. The Model 3 costs $30,000 more than the Dolphin. One factor in BYD's favor is that its most affordable cars, especially the Seagull and Dolphin, are smaller than Tesla's Model 3. Experts think this allows BYD to use smaller and cheaper batteries. BYD does not sell cars in the US, which imposed a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs in September 2024. 3 of the 10 countries and territories in the Rest of the World analysis have also imposed tariffs on Chinese EVs, according to the Market Access Map from the International Trade Center, a joint organization between the World Trade Organization and the United Nations. The UAE at 5%, Chile at 6%, and South Korea, where BYD launched in January, at 8%. BYD has expanded in many markets outside Europe, particularly in Latin America and Southeast Asia. According to Wickham, Romotion found that about 60% of EVs sold in Brazil last year were BYD models. BYD is ramping up production outside China, where the cost of producing EVs is relatively low. Wickham said the company expects to have another big year in 2025 and is watching to see if its global expansion will have a long-term impact on prices. As production ramps up and volumes increase, it could be really interesting for BYD to have a number of facilities around the world where they can produce EVs much cheaper than anyone else. Tesla, on the other hand, is primarily focusing on sales in the US and Europe. The company doesn't sell in any African or South Asian countries and only sells in two Latin American countries, Mexico and Chile. After Tesla announced that US President Donald Trump would impose a 25% tax on cars manufactured outside national borders, and Canada would retaliate. Only one question came to mind. Will Canada prefer BYD or a brand produced much closer to the US, Tesla? The candidate for Canada could be Mexico. Mexico's first domestic EV faces a bumpy road. Project Alinea aims to launch its first model in 2026 as a cheaper alternative to popular Chinese electric vehicles. At a press briefing in the capital earlier this year, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum beamed with joy as she projected an image of three box-shaped compact electric vehicles onto a screen. Named Alinea, which means to move in the Nahuatl indigenous language, they will be the first fully designed and assembled electric vehicles in Mexico. They will be safe, efficient, sustainable, and accessible to millions of Mexicans, the project's director Roberto Capuano said during the presentation. Roberto Capuano also stated that the first model will be ready by the start of the 2026 World Cup in Mexico City and will be available to the general public in 2030. The Alinea project, which aims to produce electric vehicles made up almost entirely of Mexican components, is being promoted as a response both to the government's goal of generating 45% clean electricity by 2030 and to the influx of imported Chinese electric vehicles such as BYD and Chery, which account for almost a tenth of new cars sold in Mexico. But Alinea faces a number of challenges, including an insufficient budget, an underdeveloped lithium industry essential for battery production, and an unreasonable timeline, experts said. Experts at Tesla in particular have been negative critics of this Mexican vehicle. But now that Mexico's indigenous EV has completed its development, Canada can respond to the United States in a much tougher way. For now, Ottawa has diplomatically indicated its plans to retaliate against the US, but time will likely dictate Canada's choice of economic response. And that's the latest on today's top stories. What are your thoughts? If you'd like to dive deeper into any of these topics or explore related issues, feel free to leave a comment. Thank you for tuning in and spending your time with us. Stay informed, stay curious, and we'll see you next time. Take care.